All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The Security Council held an open meeting on Libya this morning. Briefing council members, the Secretary General's Special Representative, Ghassan Salame, said that the armed conflict in the country shows no signs of abating, with the war around Tripoli having left nearly 1,100 people dead, including more than 100 civilians. He noted that forces on both sides have failed to observe their obligations under international humanitarian law, pointing to the deadly airstrike that hit the migrant detention center in Tajoura earlier this month. Mr. Salame said that following UN-backed efforts to move the migrants to more secure locations in recent days, authorities have moved more than 200 migrants back into the bombed facility in Tajoura. He also stressed that the deaths of up to 150 migrants at sea last week again underlines the urgent need to address the root causes of the migrant issue. He emphasized the need for migrant detention centers to be shuttered, urging the Council to call upon the authorities in Tripoli to free those held in these facilities. The Special Representative put forward a three-part plan of action to end the conflict. First, he called for a truce to be declared for Eid al-Adha. Second, he called for a high-level meeting of concerned countries to end the hostilities and implement the arms embargo. And last, a meeting of leading and influential personalities from Libya to agree on a way forward. Also on Libya, the humanitarian coordinator ad interim in Libya, Bérangère Bouel-Yousfi, strongly condemned today what she called the disgraceful shelling of Al-Alamein School and Asawiya Field Hospital south of Tripoli. Thousands of people have been deprived from access to basic services as a result. The UN and humanitarian organizations continue to call on all the parties to the conflict to respect their obligations under international humanitarian law and urge an end to the attacks on hospitals, schools, and other civilian infrastructure and personnel. I have a couple of announcements for you. The Secretary General today announced the appointment of Carla Gabriela Samoya Recari of Guatemala as his Deputy Special Representative and Deputy Head of the United Nations Verification Mission in Colombia. Ms. Samoya Recari succeeds Jessica Fayeta of Ecuador, to whom the Secretary General extends his deep gratitude for her exemplary leadership and dedication. Serving as Guatemala's ambassador to Italy and permanent representative to the United Nations organization based in Rome since 2018, Ms. Samoya Recari brings to her position over 20 years of experience in diplomacy, including in United Nations contexts, where she focused on peace and security, humanitarian, and management issues. And I have another announcement for you. Today, the Secretary General is appointing Rosine Sori Coulibaly of Burkina Faso as his new Special Representative for Guinea-Bissau and head of the UN Integrated Peacebuilding Office in Guinea-Bissau, or UNIOGBIS for short. Ms. Sori Coulibaly succeeds José Vegas Filho of Brazil, who completed his assignment on the 18th of May 2019. The Secretary General is grateful for Mr. Vegas Filho's leadership of UNIOGBIS during his tenure. Having recently served as Minister of Economy, Finance, and Development in her home country, Ms. Sori Coulibaly brings to this position more than 35 years of international and national experience in the field of sustainable and humanitarian development, political transition, poverty reduction, fiscal and budgetary reforms, gender equality, and women's empowerment. And we have more on this online. The UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan condemned yesterday's attack on the political office of Vice Presidential candidate Amrullah Saleh in Kabul. According to international media, at least 20 people were killed. On its Twitter account, UNAMA recalls that candidates are civilians and reiterates that violence has no place in Afghanistan's presidential campaign. In a statement issued today, UNAMA urges all stakeholders to work towards building trust and confidence in the election process, stressing the importance to provide the Afghan people with sufficient information and understanding to exercise an informed choice for their next president. The mission also recalls the particularly important role of the media in the elections process. Registered voters are encouraged to participate in the elections, including women, to express their democratic will. UNAMA reiterates its continued commitment and support for an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned election and acknowledges the efforts made by electoral management bodies, the government, and other stakeholders to hold a timely, transparent, and credible presidential election. Yesterday evening, we issued a statement in which the Secretary General expressed his sadness at the loss of life and destruction of property caused by landslides in the Guizhou province of China. The Secretary General extended his deepest condolences to the families of the victims and wished a speedy recovery to the injured. With the heavy rains that contributed to the landslides still falling, the Secretary General commends the search and rescue operations being conducted by the government of China. If needed, the United Nations stands ready to assist in these efforts. UNDP Administrator Akam Steiner returned today from a 5-day mission to Yemen, where he traveled to Aden, Sana'a, and Hodeidah. In a statement, Mr. Steiner said that the magnitude of the devastation and human suffering that he witnessed firsthand is difficult to comprehend. He added that the only viable solution for Yemen is peace. He said that one of the main objectives behind his visit to Yemen was to explore how development initiatives can work with all Yemenis to lay the foundation for a future with viable alternatives to war and chaos. You can find Mr. Steiner's full statement on UNDP's website. Our humanitarian colleagues remain deeply concerned for the safety and protection of civilians in northwest Syria, where some 3 million women, children, and men remain caught in the crossfire. Close to 500 civilians have been killed in the violence since the 28th of April, and more than 440,000 people have been displaced. This weekend alone, at least 35 people, including 3 health workers, were reportedly killed in a succession of airstrikes and shelling on densely populated urban areas in territory controlled by non-state armed groups. Shelling also reportedly affected urban areas in government-controlled zones. In addition, extensive damage to residential areas and civilian infrastructure reportedly included 7 schools, a health clinic, a market, and a bakery. Thousands of people fled toward the Turkish border this weekend as well. The UN reminds all parties to the conflict and those who have influence over them of their obligation to provide civilians and civilian infrastructure, and of the principles of distinction and proportionality enshrined in international humanitarian law. Our humanitarian colleagues also tell us that there have been 3 successive earthquakes in the remote northern Batanes area of the Philippines on Saturday. As of today, nearly 3,000 people, the entire population of Itbayat Island, have been displaced. 8 people were killed and more than 60 people are reportedly injured. 2 hospitals in Itbayat have been damaged and are not functional. The national government is leading the response, assisted by the Philippine Red Cross and humanitarian partners. Today, the UN Children's Fund announced an innovative partnership to construct a first-of-its-kind factory that will convert plastic waste collected in Cote d'Ivoire into modular plastic bricks. The easy-to-assemble, durable, low-cost bricks will be used to build much-needed classrooms in the West African country. According to UNICEF's executive director, Henrietta Fore, this factory will be at the cutting edge of smart, scalable solutions for some of the major educational challenges that Africa's children and communities face. Cote d'Ivoire needs 15,000 classrooms to meet the needs of children without a place to learn. With this innovative partnership, 500 classrooms for more than 25,000 children will be built in the coming 2 years. And after I'm done, you'll hear from Monica Villela-Grayle. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, Virginia Gamba, will be here to brief on the annual report of the Secretary General on Children in Armed Conflict, which is scheduled for publication tomorrow morning. That's it for me. Yes, Mr. Badli.
Thank you, Farhan. Does the Secretary General have any renewed concern about the rising violence in Hong Kong?
We've expressed our views on this in the past. As you know, it's clear that we want to make sure that the right to assemble peacefully is observed and upheld. Yes.
Farhan, I know that you have seen Al Jazeera's reporting of the ethics report, the internal ethics report at UNRWA, which says there have been abuses of authority by leadership in UNRWA. So my question is simple. Does the Secretary General have full confidence in the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Pierre Krahenbuhl?
Well, you've heard the Secretary General express his views on Mr. Krahenbuhl, but regarding the allegations you've been saying...
I haven't heard him express his views since this report has come out, so does he still have full confidence in him?
Well, on this issue, the basic point is an investigation of the allegations contained in the report that you just mentioned is ongoing. Until this investigation is completed, the Secretary General is not in a position to make any further comments on this matter. As he has shown in the past, the Secretary General is committed to acting swiftly upon receiving the full report.
So he's not prepared to answer yes or no whether he has confidence in his Commissioner General at this stage?
No, the Commissioner General has been doing excellent work, but we're saying that without prejudice to the result of this investigation. Obviously, we're waiting to see what this has to say.
And is the Secretary General concerned about some of the allegations here? Does he believe there is something rotten in UNRWA, given that 3 of the senior officials in UNRWA have departed in the last month.
Again, we won't have any further comment until the investigation is completed. So I am not prepared at this point to make an evaluation on the claims that have been made. Yes.
Farhan, there are reports that the Rohingya refugees are refusing to come back from Bangladesh to Myanmar after the diplomacy worked somehow, according to the same reports. Do you know the reason? Does the United Nations know the reason? Do they have any news on that? Why they are refusing, or what would you do to speed up that process?
Well, there are really 2 points to make on this. One is, as you know, the UN has a principled position against the concept of refoulement. So, in other words, no one can be returned to a place without their will and without their consent. So that always needs to be respected and would need to be respected in this case. Beyond that, different parts of the UN, particularly the UN Refugee Agency and the UN Development Program, have been working with the authorities in Myanmar to see what can be done to create the conducive conditions for the return of the Rohingya to Myanmar. As you know, we've made it clear that those conditions are not in place at this point.
Can I have one more?
Sure.
On the different subject, in Washington tonight, Senate is expected to vote whether to proceed with the export of the United States sales of the arms to Saudi Arabia. That there are some reports actually that some part of nuclear technology could be set. What does the Secretary General has to say on that?
I'm not going to make any comment on a domestic legislative process that's underway. We've made our concerns known overall about some of the situations that involve the country in question. Yes, Stefano.
Thank you, Farhan. About what happened on Friday, and that there was also the statement from Guterres and others officers of the UN about what's happening with the migrants situation in the Mediterranean. For what I understand, the UN called for return to sea rescues, okay? And I want you to clarify this. I would like you to clarify this in a better way. I mean, what does it mean exactly? You want the European country to go back to what they had before. That was like they were providing ships that were in the Mediterranean, patrolling the Mediterranean, and go direct them to rescue the migrants and then bring them to safe ports, so not back to Libya. Is this exactly what you asked?
Well, I would refer you back to what, in particular, UNHCR said last Friday. But from us, the standpoint is clear that all of the countries in the region need to focus first and foremost on the need to protect the lives of those who are on the high seas. And you'll have seen the suggestions they made at the time. And again, as I mentioned just this morning, Mr. Salame also stressed the need to address the root causes of the migrant issues and the need for migrant detention centers to be shuttered.
I have a follow-up. And I also heard at the Security Council, for example, the Russian ambassador, they remind all of us what Filippo Grandi had said at the Security Council, that those camps where the migrants are brought back by the Libyans are practically like Nazi lager. I mean, these are not real camps, but are torture places. Now, the question is, wouldn't it be better, all this, also your call for go back to rescue so they can bring it in safe port, to declare that those people are not anymore migrants, but actually refugees? Because if they come from Libya, that is a country at war, and if they risk their life every day, those migrants they are there, maybe they arrive as migrants, but at that point their status is such in danger, right? So why UN keep calling those people, the most of them, migrants and not refugees?
As you know, there's a procedure by which people can claim the right to asylum as refugees, and we process those once those claims are made. So this is a procedural question, whether someone has asked for refugee status or not, and has been granted it or not. But we deal with all of them. But in all honesty, from our standpoint, when it comes to protecting their lives and respecting their basic rights, it doesn't matter whether they're called migrants or refugees. The point is they need to be put in a place where they are safe and their rights are respected.
I understand.
And that's not what's been happening.
I understand that. I'm just saying, I understand that the life should be saved. It doesn't matter if it's a migrant or a refugee. I agree. Unfortunately, there are countries at the moment that they have an advantage in pushing back, bringing back these people to Libya, or other countries that are not safe, just because they say those are migrants are not refugees. If they were refugees, they will not be able to do it. Is it correct?
Well, again, the way people are determined, whether they have status as migrants or as refugees, is through a process that has to do with whether they claim the right to asylum as refugees and how that is processed and followed up. But without prejudice to that issue, we have made clear our belief that that all these people need to be moved to more secure locations. Particularly, as you'll have seen, we've said that locations like Tajoura are not a safe place to place any such people. Yes.
It's a question about today's Security Council meeting on Libya. Mr. Salame said that UNSMIL has reduced its footprint, but I have decided the mission should not leave Libya. Could you give us some more information on what the staffing is? How many people have now left Libya and are operating from neighbouring countries? How many people are still in Libya? And while I accept the bravery of those working for UNSMIL in Libya, including the Special Representative briefing from Tripoli, can you tell us whether this is now just skeleton staff and a token presence?
Well, as he made clear, there is a presence, and it includes a significant presence there. Although for security reasons, I might have to be a little bit vague about the numbers. I will try to see what we can do about. I'll see what we can say about the numbers that we have there.
If you could give us the percentage reduction, for example, that we could gauge it without any security.
Yeah, I'll see if that's possible. Monica, come on up.